Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death we might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. For surely it is not angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants. For this reason, he had to be made like them, fully human in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. Because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted.
All right, good morning. How are you? Good to see you. I want to welcome you here to High Desert Church today. Welcome here on this Victorville campus. This is a little bit of a different weekend where I would normally want to welcome those at Apple Valley and Phelan and Hesperia, but this is what we call Leads Weekend. So this message isn't going out to them. They have Kurt and Brian, and you'll get to meet him next week, but Jason Yons is our brand new Hesperia lead, and more about that in the future. But that campus is up and going in our grand liftoff. How many of you have seen that billboard on Main Street announcing that? Yeah, grand liftoff is that first weekend of March, a month from now. So if you're at all thinking about getting involved on that campus, be prayerfully considering that. So I want to welcome you here. I know you're bummed at the end of the video. You were waiting for Dumb Ways to Die and little jelly beans getting diced in half. So I apologize, it's not available this week. We have bigger and better things that we're moving on into, so it's going to be a good thing. We are, and this is week 4, in a study of the book of Hebrews. And if you have a Bible today, we're going to be in Hebrews chapter 2, so you can get that ready where it's electronic Bible, book Bible, whatever you might have that there. Hebrews is about the 6th or 7th book from the end of the New Testament, so kind of work backwards and find that there. Also, another thing that'll be super helpful to you today is if you have a copy of the notes. If you didn't get those on the way in, just raise your hand. We have some folks who'd love to get those to you and help you be able to track better throughout the message today. So let me ask you a question as we kick it off today. How many of you came in here today with a problem? Okay, now that's a kind of a difficult thing to want to respond to because you're thinking now the person next to you is going, well, is it a fungal problem that they're going to get dealt with antibiotics or what? What is this problem? And if you didn't raise your hand, you're obviously lying, okay? So you're in a bad spot either way. I had a problem a couple of weeks ago, and the problem, silly enough, was my Starbucks gift card. This is what happened to me. I had, for the first time, registered a Starbucks card, and subsequently, over the next couple of weeks, I received some sort of coupon on my cell phone. Now you're thinking, Todd, that's not a big problem. That actually sounds like a good thing. And I was excited about it, thought, okay. And so one morning, I'd even orchestrated my morning so that I would drop my kids off at school and be able to go and get a coffee on the way to work. Sound like a good deal. And the one thing that was interesting about this coupon, though, that I've never seen before is that it even warned you. It said that, hey, when you go to the next screen and push the button, you begin a 10-minute countdown. So it's a gift card with a bomb, basically. And so I was like, I've never seen one of these before. It's interesting, but I didn't push the button. I was good. And so I know what to do when I go to use it. So I'm at the Super Target in Hesperia, and it's got a Starbucks in the building. So I'm done doing my shopping I need to do in the morning. I walk over, and I'm going to this Starbucks part of the store. And as I do, I get my coupon up on the screen, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna go ahead and activate it now. So when I show it to her, then it'll just be ready to go. She'll be able to see it. So I'm literally about 20 feet away from the cash register, the counter there. I begin the sequence. The bomb has begun, and I go over and I show it to her, and the first words out of her mouth, those only work at corporate stores. And so I turn and look at my phone, and literally $4.65 is going away second by second. And so I look at it and I go, I have 9 minutes and 29 seconds to get to the other one across the freeway. So I bolted. I ran out of the store, got in my car, basically maintained the speed limit going over Main Street to the other Starbucks. Now, as I got there, if you've been to the Starbucks before, it's very, very busy. They always have a long line in the drive-thru. There's no way I'm gonna make it through there. So I park the car, I go in the store, I'm the third customer. At that moment, it's about 6 minutes or so. So I'm feeling like I can do this. And I'm telling you, I've never had so much anxiety over a gift card. What is the deal? This is like crazy. So I'm there and I'm waiting in line and the first person goes, things are going good. The next person goes, literally, I'm standing right behind him. The words out of his mouth, he's looking up at the board and he says, so what do you got here? We have 85 different combinations of coffee. What do you mean, what do we got here? And I'm sitting there and I'm starting to sweat bullets. And the countdown is just by every second, I keep looking at the screen, it's ticking down. And I can see my coffee vanishing before my eyes. So I'm watching this thing happen. I see a manager kind of going back and forth. She's not at the cash register. And literally through my brain is going the point, at what point do I reach across the counter and say, I need this now? And I'm just stuck. I do not know what to do. Finally, the guy figures out of all the combinations of coffee at Starbucks, figures out what he wants. I step up in the line. It is literally 57 seconds. And I say to the cash register, please. And he goes, I got you, you're good. And he goes, what do you want? I said, I don't care. Saying, man, leave it to Todd to figure out a way to make a gift card a bomb. Well, here's the point. I asked the question a few moments ago, how many of you have a problem today? Actually, all of our hands should have gone up. They should have gone up for this reason, because you're a part of the human race. You're a part of the human race of which every member has a very significant problem. It's the fact that you're gonna die. You're gonna die. It's an inescapable reality. It is a very big problem that we love to try to push away. We love to talk about how to prolong our life, how to delay death. But the reality is, it's like living on a conveyor belt. You are going, and you might put a lot of things in the way so you don't have to look at the end game, but it's still there nonetheless. That's a pretty widespread problem that we have. And we have no answer for how to make it stop. No one yet has figured out how to cheat death. 10 out of 10 people keep dying. But what we're gonna find out today is that an answer has arrived. Great news in this passage of Hebrews chapter 10, where death no longer has to be our greatest, biggest problem. In your notes, we're gonna talk today about Jesus and how he solved our main problem of death. He solved our main problem of death by resolving our three greatest dilemmas. You see, death in and of itself is an issue, but why is it an issue? Well, it presents these problems. It presents loss, it presents pain, and it presents fear. What's so important about loss? Loss defeats us. Pain frustrates us. We avoid it at all costs. And fear enslaves us with the worry of what we're gonna do and how this is gonna grip our lives. These are the attachments, these are the issues that come with death. Now let me clarify, what am I talking about? When I talk about being able to solve our problem of death, do I mean that somehow Jesus created a way that people don't have to die? I do mean that. But let me clarify which death I'm talking about. The Bible talks about that all of us, all humanity as a result of the fall, we'll see that today, are destined to die. Even later in the book of Hebrews, it is appointed for a man once to live and then to die. That is the death that all of us will taste. That's not the death Jesus conquered. The funny thing is, that's the death we get all worked up about. It's the second death that we actually need to be concerned about. Jesus said, don't worry about the one who can kill the body, worry about the one who would send you to hell. The Bible talks about a second death. That's the death that we'll see today that Jesus solved for us. The death that really ought to make us anxious, really ought to get us fearful, is that death that would separate us from our Creator for all of eternity. This is the death that Jesus conquered. We're gonna unpack that today, and I can't wait to get in the text with you. Now I wanna tell you something. If you're here today and you hear me talking about the idea of even whatever a second death even is, and the idea that Jesus somehow provides a way for you to not have to face it, for you to spend forever with God, that can sound a bit fanciful. It can sound a bit like a fairy tale. And if that's you, if you're here today and that's the perspective you're coming from, let me say two things. Number one, I am so glad you're here. I am so glad you're here. And as you're here and you're processing, you don't know anything about this whole life ever after, this thing with God, cheating death. You're just like, it just seems so fantastic, like I couldn't even believe it. Let me just ask you a very pointed question. What better alternative have you come up with? What better answer do you have to the reality that we will face some kind of death and what happens to you after you die? If you don't have a better answer yet, can I tell you something? Can you push aside the distractions that you're using to keep fooling yourself, living in denial? And would you give today's message from this book of Hebrews just an open hearing? Give it a fair hearing and see if this doesn't do more than make sense, but cause you to rejoice. We're gonna look today, as we look at Hebrews chapter 2, we're gonna see what I call a necessary means to a life-giving end. Let me use that phrase again. This is what Jesus does for us. He takes on a necessary means in order to give us a life-changing end, and this is what he did. Jesus, the text is gonna tell us today, became one of us. Jesus took on flesh. We call it the incarnation. We just celebrated that at Christmas. Christmas is all about Jesus taking on flesh and becoming one of us. And that's what he did. And as a result of that humanity, he creates a way for us to be right with God forever. So let's get to it. How does Jesus do this? How does Jesus solve our greatest problem? First off, in your notes, the incarnation of Jesus reclaimed our original position of subjection. What do I mean by that? Well, let's read this together. Whether you have a Bible in front of you or you have the screen here, let's read together the first portion of our passage beginning in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 5. Read it out loud with me. It is not to angels that he has subjected the world to come, about which we are speaking. But there is a place where someone has testified, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? A son of man that you care for him. You made them a little lower than the angels. You crowned them with glory and honor, and put everything under their feet. In putting everything under them, God left nothing that is not subject to them. Yet at present, we do not see everything subject to them. But we do see Jesus, who was made lower than the angels for a little while, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. Pastor Tom told us in week 1 of this passage that the first time we were actually going to see the second member of the Trinity, the Son of God mentioned by name, was here in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 9. But we do see Jesus. What the author of Hebrews is doing, he's starting here in verse 5, he's connecting back to this theme that has begun the book. It's going to drop away soon thereafter. And it's this theme of angels. The readers of Hebrews have an inordinate value of, or what are truly just simply the messengers of God. They have this fantastical idea of how wonderful and splendid they are. And from the very beginning, the author of Hebrews had to say, but Jesus is far superior to them. He's going to really push the envelope in this text. He's going to tell us that not only is the Son of God superior to angels, even us, human beings on God's cosmic value chart, his system for what he prioritizes and loves, we are at the top of the pyramid. That kind of bends our mind. We have to ask the question, why? Well, Genesis chapter 1 tells us, let us make them, man and woman, in our image. You are an image bearer of God. You woke up and looked in the mirror this morning and you did not think that. Does not look like God to me. But you bear the image of God related to the character, related to the components, related to the identity that you have. Nothing you ever had to do to earn it. You're simply part of the human race who is it. Genesis chapter 2, by the way, verse 15, not only talks about our identity being image bearers, but then even goes on to explain our role. It says this in the Bible about that God placed Adam in the garden. And in placing him in the garden, verse 15, put him there to work it and to take care of it. Mankind was placed in, and remember Genesis 2 is before the fall. So in God's perfect created order, he put humanity in the garden, on the planet, to govern, to have authority over, to lead, to be the steward of every other created thing. I don't know if you ever thought of yourself that way, that you were given this both identity and role from the very beginning simply because you're human. That was God's intent from the very beginning. You have a distinct identity bearing his image and a distinct role of giving stewardship to his creation. It begs a simple question. Do you know who you are? Do you know who you are? I'm gonna make a couple references today to me, a wonderful series of books, that of the Narnia series, specifically The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Now, you hear me say that and some of you are like, oh, is he one of those? You know, like I have friends who are into the whole Lord of the Rings things. They speak elfin to each other. I'm not like that. Okay, I'm not a Narnia nerd. But I will say this, these books are so powerful. It is a pure book of fantasy fiction that is woven all throughout the story of redemption. One scene early in the book is the four children go through the wardrobe. And they come out on the other side and they are in a land they never knew existed, a land called Narnia. And as they begin to interact with the citizens of Narnia, who many of them are much more powerful, many of them are much more grand, but they have this unique esteem that they can't account for. And someone finally tells them, but you don't understand. You are a son of Adam. You are a daughter of Eve. You hold the place of king and queen in our land. Four simple children on that side, in that reality, were the highest esteemed of all the land and would ultimately be crowned and rule. That's the kind of subjection that God intended for us to have on this world, but the fall comes into play. Genesis 3 happens. Adam and Eve rebelled. And as a result, the creation is not under our subjection any longer. The psalmist goes, or the author of Hebrews goes back and quotes Psalm chapter 8 about this amazing thing of God's amazing power in creation. And he set man, he set woman, he set humanity in a role of subjection over the created order. Those are the words. But the fall broke that. And we look around us and we see a world that is totally outside of our control. Sometimes due to our own sin called greed, other times just due to the simple reality that there are natural disasters that wipe out scores of us. There are sicknesses that kill us left and right. Our greed gobbles up our resources, not even thinking about the present or the future. We are obviously not in control, though it was what God designed us for. So we walk through this kind of argument that the author of Hebrews is making, that compared to angels, understand yourself, the reader, that you are highly esteemed in God's value system. Though they may be powerful, supernatural, much higher than the angels are you valued. But it's not about you, it's about Jesus, because he came in our flesh. He came in our likeness. In your notes, you don't have a place particular to write this, but write out the words representative champion. Representative champion, because we see at the end of this verse, what was Jesus doing? So that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone, once for all. You may have seen movies or you're a student of history and you know that there were seasons where armies would battle each other, but they would do it in a very unique fashion. They would send out a representative champion, 2 nations on one side of a valley, but they would send out one warrior from here, one warrior for here. They would battle to the death. And whoever would win was winner take all. This champion won for that whole group of people, even though they never fought themselves. Jesus is our representative champion who tasted death and defeated it on our behalf. More about that to come. The best way I could think about that for us as some sort of connection in our world might be the Olympics. You know, our Winter Olympics begin this month. And I think about delegates that we have sent from the United States of America. Think of them in single sports, like the idea of ski jumpers. How crazy is that? Just barreling down this hill and taking off and flying like 300 feet. I just think that's the coolest thing in the world, watching that thing. And I just go, please don't die, please don't die, please don't die, all the way through the air. Or think about the half-pipe snowboard event, or think about the single-person luge. Are you kidding me? 95 miles an hour over straight ice, you're nuts. But when that American athlete wins, and when they stand on that podium and receive that gold medal, they are our representative champion. And what do they win for us? Well, they win bragging rights. They win a sense of national pride. We wear a lot of red, white, and blue. That's great. But nothing in comparison to the representative champion of Jesus when he takes on flesh and does for us once for all that we now don't have to do, to taste this second death. A problem that we could never solve, but a problem that he did. Secondly, in your notes, what does the incarnation mean? What does it afford us? It affords us the fact that Jesus revealed a pathway through suffering. Jesus revealed a pathway through suffering. Look at verse 10 in the same chapter that we're in. Read it out loud with me. In bringing many sons and daughters to glory, it was fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, should make the pioneer of their salvation perfect through what he suffered. Both the one who makes people holy and those who are made holy are of the same family. So Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. He says, I will declare your name to my brothers and sisters. In the assembly, I will sing your praises. And again, I will put my trust in him. And again, he says, here am I and the children God gave me. Now, I haven't said it yet today, but literally each of these 3 passages we're looking at today in chapter 2 are a message, a sermon all on their own. So we're only able to hit some high points today. But here's one thing that we see, 2 ideas from this passage. First off, what's the deal with suffering? Why was it important that Jesus somehow be made perfect through suffering? Why not perfect through joy? Why not perfect through power? Why perfect through suffering? Is God just some kind of figure who says the more pain, the better? Bring it on, let's have him suffer a little bit. That's where he's really gonna get tested. I really don't think that's the point, nor the point of the author. I think the point is actually much more for us. You see, when Jesus came and took on flesh, beginning in that humble stable in Bethlehem, when Jesus did that, he did that as a means to communicate to us that he was not pretending to know what we go through. He was not pretending to somehow walk in our steps and live in our world. He entered it full force. He understands what it is to be us, not just in the simple reality of being human, but being human in a fallen world. The word, by the way, in our text is the word, he became perfect. I love that phrase, by the way, the pioneer of our salvation, the trailblazer of our salvation became perfect. Now, it brings to question, some of us are going, wait a second, I thought Jesus was perfect. Is he somehow was not perfect and then became? That Greek word really actually communicates better the idea of complete. He became complete through suffering. His experience of being one of us was complete because he went through the kinds of things that we go through. We're gonna see this theme, by the way, developed all throughout the book of Hebrews, that Jesus became one of us. He knows what it is through the highs and through the lows to be human. But I wanna tell you, like the readers then, like us reading Hebrews today, what incredible encouragement to know that when you talk to Jesus, to know that when you consider him and his life lived, he knows what it's like to be you. He knows what it's like when we hurt because he's been there. He knows what it's like when we endure physical pain. If you ever had a question about that, watch The Passion of the Christ and that will be settled. He knows what it's like when we suffer loss. To me, one of the most moving passages, narratives in the entire gospel series is Jesus when he comes and he's been told that Lazarus, his friend, has died. Jesus had already told his disciples that he knew Lazarus was gonna die, waited, intentionally didn't come to heal him. So as he comes and he walks to the tomb, I love this part. I grew up in church reading the King James Bible as a kid. And I'll never forget this passage. Jesus says, roll away the stone, and the people's response, they exclaimed, Lord, he stinketh. He is whiffy, it's been 3 days. Nothing good's coming on there. Jesus says, remove the stone. And in the moving words, two powerful words in scripture, John 11:35, once the stone has been removed, Jesus wept. Jesus did not weep because he was concerned for Lazarus, because literally in moments, he was going to raise him from the dead. He wept because he associated with our understanding of loss, because all the people that were joining him thought they would never live and experience and do life with Lazarus again. Sin and death separates. Jesus understands this. Jesus knows what it's like to get knifed in the back and to get kissed on the cheek by the very same person. Jesus understands what we go through. He knows because he's been there. And we find great encouragement in the fact that when we go to him, he is not some mighty, transcendent deity far, far away who can't relate to our world. He gets it because he's walked in our shoes. And we find great encouragement through that. By the way, those of you who are in our small group study this week, if you take your notes that you're in right now, turn to the back panel. Right in the middle, there's like 3 or 4 solid questions you'll be discussing this week about what are the implications of the humanity of Jesus and the fact that he knows what it's like to be us. If you're not in a small group, by the way, those same questions are there every single weekend for you. They're not exclusive to small group members. If you're not in a small group yet, take some time this week and study this passage more on your own. That's the first idea here. Second idea. What's the second idea of this text? What are the implications of Jesus being our brother? What is that even all about? So many of us have thought about Jesus through lots of different lenses. He is a savior. He is the good shepherd. He is our Lord. He is a teacher. He's a healer. He is the Son of God. That's the familial word we think of related to Jesus' family. He's the Son of God. Have you ever considered the fact that Jesus is your brother? Your big brother. It spins my brain in a whole new direction. Now, for some of you, you don't want to think about Jesus as your brother because you have not so fond memories of being under a big brother growing up. Jesus is not that kind. Jesus isn't the kind of big brother who taunts you, not the kind of big brother who excludes you, not the kind of big brother who picks on you. He's not that type. And how do I know? I was a big brother. I did not do well. I did all those things to my younger brother, sadly to say. But Jesus is a different kind of big brother. Why? He is your champion. He is your role model. He is your protector. He is your encourager. This is the kind of big brother that's introduced to us in Hebrews chapter 2. The kind of big brother that paves the way for you to follow. Just let your mind roll a little bit with that idea. How cool to be able to respond to the creator of the universe as your big brother who's gone before you. The author of Hebrews includes this role here because it serves his purpose of helping us know that Jesus isn't even just one of us. Jesus is here. We are from the same family. We read those words. from the same family. We've sat at the same table. He's not just a human on somewhere on the other side of the globe. He is even here, walking ahead of me. And like an older brother taking the punishment for a younger, rebellious sibling, so Jesus took the punishment for younger, rebellious siblings like us. And as a result, solved our greatest problem of death. It brings us to our third point. The incarnation of Jesus restricted the power of Satan. The incarnation of Jesus restricted the power of Satan. Let's finish this passage and read it together, verse 14. Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he may break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. For surely it is not angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants. For this reason he had to be made like them, fully human in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. Because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. Now, we just read a mouthful. There was so much going on in those last 5 verses of Hebrews chapter 2. And I want to give you encouragement why we will not be able to hit on any of them the way I'd like to today. The book of Hebrews is written in a very interesting cyclical pattern, where what he introduces here in chapter 2, he will revisit again in chapter 4, and then again in chapter 7, and then again in chapter 10. So these themes throughout Hebrews are going to begin to surface in our study together over the next few months. We will get more time to break that down. But suffice it to say, from what we just read, this is where it gets good. We began 2 weeks ago talking in Hebrews chapter 1 that Jesus is better. Jesus is superior to the prophets and their revelation at that time. Jesus is superior not just to the message, but even the messenger, that being of angels. But as we read that, as we heard that, it maybe developed the question, how? How is he better? Last weekend, we looked at a warning from the first part of Hebrews chapter 2. And the warning was to pay attention so that the salvation that's right in front of our nose doesn't drift away from us. Why? Why is that so significant? We've seen today that Jesus took on flesh, became human to identify with us in every sense of the human experience. But aside from seeming blasphemous, let me ask the question, so what? What is all this for? What is all this about? Why is this so important? And the author of Hebrews lands it in these last few words that we looked at today. All of this matters. All of this is important because Jesus, God himself and human, 100% as well, offered up his sinless, perfect life so that you and I would not have to face the greatest problem known to mankind, a death that we could not solve, a death we could not escape. That which we had been held in anxiety and fear all our lives, as the text said. Now I want to say something. You may be here today and you process that phrase, who were held in fear, enslaved to death. And you go, Todd, I'm not so sure I agree with that. I have not been anxious about the fact that I'm dying all week. I came in here today actually feeling pretty good, looking forward to the Super Bowl. You're a bummer. So I'm not really sure that my life is held in bondage to the slavery of being afraid of death. But I want to tell you, that's only true when you're living in denial. Because the reality is coming just the same and you have no answer for it. It's like the last time that you maybe saw something on TV where there was a hostage situation. Human beings were held as ransom from some crazy person. And in the midst of it, what you understood very clearly is that this is a situation where life and death hang in the balance. It's just a trigger away. And whether you knew anyone involved or not, you were sitting on the edge of your chair wondering how it was going to go. Because now it's face to face, death is real. The problem is we don't think very often that we live in a hostage situation. But as we've seen here today and all throughout the Bible, as a result of the fall, we see that we are held hostage on a fallen planet where all that is guaranteed is death, not even your next breath. I told you I was going to give you a couple examples from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I was fascinated this week as I was preparing for this message. I was actually convicted. Convicted by the fact that as I was trying to understand the truths of Hebrews 2, trying to grab hold of its concepts, trying to go back and resource and reference the Old Testament passages I had read, as I was doing that, I missed the main point. I missed the main thing of Hebrews chapter 2. And it's summed up in the book and in the movie, where at the end, the White Witch comes into Aslan's camp. The camp has an air of excitement because Edmund the traitor has found a way back. He's been restored. But the White Witch comes and she makes this proclamation in great authority and confidence. I have come for the traitor because the laws that govern our land say that every traitor's blood belongs to me. The interesting thing about the scene is nobody argues with her, because they all know that it's true. And as fear and uncertainty cloud the whole scene in that moment, Aslan says, "Come with me, I need to talk." They go inside, the witch and him, into his tent, and for some season, no one knows how long, they emerge. And as they come out, the witch has this devilish, joyful look on her face, mounts back onto her throne and is escorted out of the camp. And Aslan says in that wonderful, powerful Liam Neeson voice, the White Witch has renounced her claim on the traitor. The ensuing scene, without anyone's prodding, is instant celebration, instant joy. He was about to die, rightfully so. There was nothing anyone could do about it. And just like that, his fate turned on a dime. What the citizens of Narnia did not understand, but we understand in our story, they would understand it later, is that in that tent, Aslan bartered his life for the traitor. The exchange was made. The problem is, in our narrative, we don't understand often enough that we are Edmund. Traitors, rebels, who under the laws that govern our world also say that we have no hope because we fall infinitely short of the holiness of God. And as a result, Satan has claim on us, but Jesus says, as a result of what he did at the cross, because he made atonement for our sin, Jesus says confidently to all of us today, he who holds the power of death releases his claim on you because I took your place. What is the resulting response? Just like the citizens of Narnia, we break out in praise. We break out and rejoice. Ecstatic praise to the one who changed everything and solved our greatest fear. In your notes, this God-man, Jesus, because he destroyed what we fear, now we can live. Because he destroyed what we feared most, now we can live in light of what he's done for us. And rejoice is exactly what we're gonna do. I'm gonna pray, don't you dare leave, because we're gonna lift our voices and rejoice over what our Savior's done for us today. Let me pray. Jesus, it is to you specifically we come today, absolutely joyful, absolutely overwhelmed, of what your death, what your resurrection has done for us. The fact that Satan laid claim on our lives, rightfully so. You came and you changed everything. Satan has released his claim on us. Now we can be yours. That absolutely blows our minds. We rejoice and we simply say thank you. You may be here today and you don't know what all the rejoicing's about. Because it's interesting in the story of Narnia, Edmund had every opportunity to say, hey, no thank you. I'll take it, I deserve it. I'll let the queen continue to have a hold on me. He didn't. He responded to the invitation, the grace, the gift that was given to him in the life of Aslan in his place. That's the invitation that Jesus extends to you. And you respond to him appropriately through the ABCs. A is admit. Admit that you are, as it were, a traitor. Admit that you are a sinner who has lived life on your terms, not on God's. And when you admit that, you simply admit that you're a part of the fallen human race like everyone else in this room is a part of. B is believe. Believe that this Jesus we've talked about today, that he lived a sinless life, that he died a sacrificial death, that he was raised supernaturally, conquering that second death that we have not even begun to be afraid of. Jesus beat that. And the way that he beats that for you, the way he champions that for you, is when you're a part of his people. When you become, as it were, his sister, his brother. And you do that because you see, choose. Choose to say today, Jesus, you have offered yourself up for me. I respond today, I want to be in your family. I want to call you brother. And I want to live life on your terms, forgiven for my sin with purpose. You can make that decision before you even get out of your chair, and that second death never has to be a worry again. Jesus, we come to you because of all that you are and all that you've done for us. We say thank you, and we rejoice. We pray because of your name. Amen.